Okay, guys, phase 3 or cut 3. The only thing that's different is we polished the short side on the exhaust and we cut it for a 2055 valve. In fact, this valve is one of my original swirl port out of the old work truck valves, 2055. That was the valve that was used. If you take a good look at it, you can see I've got an angle on this. That's a DV. That's a DV trick to cut anti-reversion. I don't always use it today. Depends on what I'm doing. But this worked out fairly well. It looks like you've got a big snot right in that corner, which I'm not thrilled with. But this part of the chamber looks really good. We do have a little bit of gunk that carries right across our exhaust valve. I left the exhaust valve in so we could see the way it comes around this plug boss. It comes around this plug boss like this. You can really see it. Now, you can't take that plug boss out, but we can change it a little bit. I mean, it's already changed quite a bit from stock. This is much rounder. I may take more of this out to give it a little more area instead of it, because it's coming across at a high angle. And you can see that when we take a look at the bore. Okay, and it's really, we're getting a lot of splatter on this corner. A lot of splatter. Let's take a look at the bore. Okay, you can still see it's coming in at a steep angle. We have to compare the swirl from the last cut to this cut at 600 lift. This was done at 600 lift. And we've got a lot of spray pattern splatter all the way around. Okay, we can see where that splatter on that chamber came from. Look at how wide that pattern is. Okay. We still have our very high angle going across the bowl. Okay. I have not checked the throat on this, but it's probably very similar to the ratio that it was before. We can still see our overlap sucking right through to the exhaust when that liquid was still wet. And we've got a fairly nice pattern on our exhaust. Nice and wide. Okay, so that's coming along. Let's see, let's take a look down its throat. Okay, it's starting to get interesting. That liquid pattern is basically a shadow of that shape of that opening. That's kind of interesting. Now, I did do some flow ball work on this while it was up and running. And this inside edge here, let's see if you can see my finger. This inside edge right here has got a lot of fast air across it. I'm just going to take a look at our speeds. Yeah, we're 290 right there versus 183 on the other side. Okay, so it's going to want some more room to get the air across that. And I think that may be where I'm going to work. I think I'm going to take a good sized piece out of that high helix swirl ramp and give it more short side radius, because our swirl is almost twice what I want. Okay, I may not be able to get that down that much, but the more short side you give it, and it works according to the air speeds, the more it'll knock that swirl down. And we're going to experiment. This is the experiment head. Let's take a look at it. So far, from what I see, I like the 2055 valve. Okay, the exhaust is the same, but you can see I did a little polish action on the short side, and I only did it with the sand roll, so it's nothing fancy. Let's see if that made a difference. Okay, second cut, third cut, 202 valve, 2055 valve. Didn't like it. Plus, 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 plus. One minus at the very top. I'll take it as a win. Maybe I had a clue what I was doing in the 80s. Maybe I was lucky. In any case, I told you they ran really well. This is probably pretty darn close to what I was getting out of these in the 80s. I'm willing to bet they're within a few CFM of what I was getting in the 80s. Okay, now I said I took these off and I put AFR 190s that flowed 262, and it only made a slight difference at the very top end. The mid-range, as far as RPM, went to the swirl ports. There's no question. It was a better driving truck with the swirl ports. It's a 5,800-pound truck. It needs torque. Okay, so I'm going to take that as a win. How do we do as far as our swirl, right? We were way high over here. Take a look at our pluses and minuses. Plus, plus, minus, plus, plus, minus, 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 plus, plus, plus. Okay, I'm glad there's a couple minuses on there, but they're not big minuses. And the pluses aren't big. So it really hasn't changed a huge amount. I mean, the biggest difference is right here at the lowest lift. I think is the biggest difference, right? Because you got to remember, the valve is barely open and the chamber is really tight. So like my buddy Nick said, right, the bigger valve is really going to make that spin. He knew what he was talking about. Okay, we'll take a look at our intake air speeds. This is our second cut pinch, third cut pinch. This is the 2055. Plus equals plus. Now, this was taken at 600 lift. We got 228.4 versus 228.7. They're almost identical as far as flow, but it pulls on the pinch a little bit differently. Okay? I like these numbers better than these numbers. Now, let's take a look at our roof. We went down center of the cylinder side. Went down a lot, actually, with the bigger valve. So that's telling us something, right? We're getting air out in the rest of the periphery of the valve. And our cylinder wall side went up. So it's telling us exactly what's going on, right? Less is dumping in the center, more is on the outside. This is a better setup than this, by far. Okay? All right. Our short side, 361. We got a little more speed on that inside edge. That's not good. Okay? As far as our outside went down. So I'm going to say that's good, that's bad. All right, I'd love to get my short side speeds around 330, 340, something like that. That'd be great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this short side much bigger so to give it more area. And I do expect to go through the casting at some point because I don't know how much metal is behind that high helix, but it really doesn't matter. At least I can figure it out. I have a feeling. Let me flip the head over and I'll show you. Okay, now if you guys can see this vein here, right? The end of this high helix is just angled a little bit here. Well, I think the more I angle this and the deeper it goes, moving this short side line here over more, giving it more of a short side, I think that will be helpful. We'll find out. I think that's what the mod I'm going to do next on this. The exhaust, I am going to widen this port according to my my air speeds. As a matter of fact, we need to go over our flows on the exhaust. Let's do that next. Okay, we got some interesting stuff going on with the exhaust port. Now, the only thing different about the exhaust port is I polished that short side radius. Okay, and it's just the apex of it. It's not the entire floor. So, this is our second cut. This is our third cut. Minus, plus, 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 plus. I forgot to do our 700 and 800 lift. I don't know why. I just... Alzheimer's, I guess. How did we do as far as inch and 5/8? This is 183.6, 185.6, up a touch. 190.5, 195. So this is getting closer to where we want it to be. Let's take a look at our airspeeds in the port, which are really interesting. Okay, this is our second cut airspeeds. These are our third cut airspeeds. These pluses and minuses are in reference to this. Minus, 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 minus. Taken at 600, it flows 170 and it flows 175. So it flows more and it has slower airspeeds everywhere. It's even more dead at the floor. It went from 107 to practically nothing. But we get more flow out of it, so I'm taking it as a win. Now I'm going to be taking these airspeeds and doing a little work to make them a little more even from side to side, if I can. I would like to liven this up a little bit. That is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. In fact, that's kind of tough. I also have to check the throat ratio. I'm sure it's still really tight. So I will be working on that for our next cut. I'm going to change that short side on the intake. I'm going to work on the walls of that exhaust. All right, guys. I'm interested in your feedback on this project so far. I mean, it's still nowhere near where I was hoping it would be. As far as I'm concerned, it's not looking good for me to get these to like 260. I don't know if I can get that done, but we're going to work on it some more and see what we can get. Now, if we ran a 600 lift cam, you put a decent sized header on it, you give it a good intake manifold. And you know what's funny? Is in the 90s, I ran a Victor Jr. on these. As it sits right now, some Victor Juniors won't keep up with that. They're only 230, 235. So, pretty close. It's more than an RPM Performer will do as it sits. So, I know, because I've done it before, with a 2-barrel throttle body and a 4-barrel throttle body on a Victor Jr. These made decent top end, better than you would expect. I mean, yeah, they kind of petered out around 5,500, 6,000, but up until then, remember, it was a real short cam with steel retainers, so it was heavy, very fast valve action, right? It's only 206 duration at 533 lift, so that thing is really opening and closing at a high rate of speed. It really needs titanium retainers. That'll be on our list of things to do for this setup, no doubt. All right, guys, give me some input on how you think it's shaping up, or if it's a complete failure like usual. And don't be afraid of hurting my feelings. You know why? Because I don't have any. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. Have a good night.